for sexuality.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Spirituality and Sustainability Summit. Today we have an amazing speaker named Ken Rosaasen.
It's a tough one.
Yes, it's a tough one. And how did Ken and I meet? Through the matrix of
Community here.
community.
Yeah, and ended up at the meditation. Yeah.
Absolutely, a meditation group that we attend. And we're really happy to talk a little bit about today about what Ken does and lives. He is a sexuality empowerment coach, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. I'm going to be asking him some really nice, juicy questions and learning about how this work is so pivotal and important in this age of sustainability. So I'm going to start off with the first question.
Yeah.
What is sacred sexuality?
So, sacred sexuality is a term that you've probably heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people in the conscious community refer to sacred sex, and a lot of times people probably don't understand exactly what that is. And to me, the way I explain it is something that's sacred is something that you're using as a doorway to the divine, right? And nothing in and of itself is necessarily sacred. Like some people have sacred objects on the altar and things like that, and it's their relationship to those objects that makes it sacred. And so in that way, sacred sexuality is your relationship to your sexuality that makes it sacred. And specifically when you're using your sex or your sexuality, your sexual expression as a doorway to transcend the ordinary world, ordinary reality, duality, into that oneness consciousness, that God consciousness. So that's what I see sacred sexuality as.
Yeah. And so, how did this spark within you?
Ooh.
Yeah, on a
So that's a good question, because so if you're familiar with astrology, and I'm sure a lot of you people watching this are familiar with astrology. So I'm a Scorpio.
Me too.
Really? With 5 planets in Scorpio.
Ooh.
And Aries moon, so that makes for a really intense combination. So what that looked like in my life was a lot of relationships. And in my younger years, I went from one relationship to the next, and I didn't really understand why until I got older and understand more about my nature as a Scorpio. And Scorpios tend to love to go deep, and it can be very intense. And so my way of finding depth in life was through sex. And so, but at that time, I definitely didn't bring any sacredness to sex, and it was just used as a tool unconsciously to get validation,
right?
To seek for love that I didn't have inside my own self, right? And didn't even know that I was looking for. And also that led me down a road of like pleasure seeking and things like that. So my journey with sexuality and sex in general in the beginning of my life was many sexual partners. I have 4 children, 4 beautiful, amazing children with 3 different women. And I, when I was younger, didn't understand what my problem was. Why do I have this issue? My mom, one time, when I forget, I was 25 years old, she's like, here, she gave me this book, and I was like, it was about men and sex addiction, right? And I was like,
wow.
I'm not addicted to sex. And I was like, am I? So that started to spark some something inside of me to search deeper and understand what is my relationship to sex, right? Why do I seem to be searching for something through this sexual connection with women and not seem to be able to find it, right? So fast forward many years, and over the last 3 or 4 years, I began to shift my relationship to sexuality. I moved here to San Diego about 4 years ago, and quickly dove into the Tantra community out here, and which I immediately resonated with. And so that is what like introduced me to this concept of sexuality and spirituality to get together.
Yeah, and they go together.
Right, absolutely.
Wow.
So,
so this moment when your mom handed you this book was like question marks went up.
Totally, you know, because it made me go, okay, it's my mom, so she's seeing something maybe I wasn't seeing, and I definitely had other addictions in my life, drugs, alcohol, and you know, things that I knew about that I was addicted to. So I really wanted to take a look at that and see if there was any truth to me being addicted to sex.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so this that you went through brought you to this place of feeling like, okay, I have learned how to handle myself and find spirituality within my sexuality, and now I feel like I can help people do this. And so what is like, how do you help someone do that? Like how does that work?
What does that look like? Well, I mean, so it's different with every person depending on where they're at. And so the way I like to look at it is like starting from the basics, which is like, are you holding shame and guilt? You know, what has been your experience in the past? What is your relationship to your sexuality right now? You know, has there been things, trauma? Have you experienced abuse around sexuality? You know what I mean? These things are fundamental, you know? And so to me, I like to start there. And if you think of the chakra systems, right? Think of the root and sacral. And this is where we hold a lot of that trauma and sexuality, you know, hold shame and guilt around our sexuality. It's locked down there. So it's like that's the basement, that's the beginning steps, the foundation, right? And you know, what is different with what I do versus some other people who are in the sexuality realm and tantra realms is they will go first into, you know, helping people become better lovers and techniques around becoming a better lover, how to experience more pleasure
in the bedroom,
in sexual arena,
in the sexual realm. Okay.
And which is there's nothing wrong with that inherently. It's like that's part of it too. It's part of being sexually empowered. But for me, addressing these things first, is key, fundamental.
So really getting to the core of the trauma or the, you know, what's the root of why you were acting out or creating this addiction, or, you know, trying to, you know, numb your feelings with sex, and how do we heal that and then move forward. So it sounds like this is really deep work, other than like techniques of like,
because we're all subject to this, because I mean, if you grew up in a Western culture, it's largely influenced through Christianity, you know. And I'm not pointing fingers, but I was raised in a Christian home, and so there was definitely this separation of sexuality and spirituality. You know.
Absolutely.
And so whether you've been traumatized or raped or molested, you know, maybe you haven't had this experience. However, there's still programming that exists in almost all of us in this culture. And so it's like addressing these things. It's like, okay, like how do you feel when you express your sexuality? Do you feel free? Do you have things that are coming up that you don't feel okay to share? Are you having fantasies that you're holding shame around having, you know? And so that's all part of sexual empowerment too. You know?
And so these feelings that you're talking about, that would be almost like one of your ideal people to work with, is like these people who are experiencing shame and guilt around the past and their desire. And so how would one know, like, I need help with this? How, like, like, how does one like awaken to like be magnetized to someone like you, or like, you know, like, and this might be a question you might not be able to answer, but
No, I think it's a good question. I think so. One of the first signs that something's going on is that in a relationship with your lover, boyfriend, partner, that you might notice that you've come to a place in your sexual relating with that person where you may seem stuck.
Okay.
Right? Where you're repeating you're doing the same thing every time in bed. Where, you know, you kiss, you touch, you have sex, orgasm, sleep, go your separate ways, or whatever your pattern is. Noticing you're having a pattern is your first sign that there's something that's missing, and it's something that needs to be addressed, you know. Because it's my belief that the sexual realm is something that's ever expanding.
Right.
And when you are fully sexually expressed, you and your partner, then there is no limits, there is no boundaries. It's like, it's a container for spiritual and sexual expression.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So it's like couples, they're like, a lot of couples are, they're in like 2 years, 3-year relationship, and then they just hit this wall, and they're like, oh, it's just the same thing. We do the thing, they start to maybe think something's wrong, or look outside of, the relationship to, fix it, or okay.
And then for men and women, it can be different. For women, a lot of times it's inability to like achieve orgasm with their partner, and maybe they were able to do it at one time, but then they, for some reason, are not able to do it anymore. For men, it can show up as like not the inability to maintain an erection, or or premature ejaculation, and holding shame around those type of things. And also for men and women, porn is a huge sign that there's something going on in relationship to your own sexuality. And so those are different ways they can kind of manifest in us, and those are signs that, hey, I might want to take a look at what's going on in that,
because things could get, like, it could turn worse, and
I mean, it's just like,
it's a block.
You understand, it's something, when we repress things, we may feel like we're okay for a while. As we continue on with our life, they start to come back up again. They come up to the surface, and then as they come closer to the surface, they start to manifest in different ways, And in one of the ways, like, I notice is that when we're repressing anything emotionally, we're literally pushing it down in our body. Right? You understand the somatic and trauma and issues are in our tissues, right? It's like when we push anything down, it's like it wants a way out. It's in there, in our body, in our being, in our energetic field, and it's like through sexuality, it can find a way to be expressed, right? But if it's not done consciously, then it doesn't have the same result. So,
Wow. And so, Encinitas train. So, do you work with, would you work with couples, like, together, or would you work, like, separate, or?
I think working with couples, I don't work with couples right now, but I want to. And I think it could be powerful for two people to come together in that and take a look at these things together. And if they feel comfortable to do that, but it's not easy to get two people on the same page necessarily to do that. It can be really difficult for one person to be like, hey, I feel like I need to take a look at what's going on. My sexuality and my relationship to my sexuality. But I'm interested in doing work with couples and in groups as well in the future.
Like a group of people all working through that. Wow. That's really cool, Ken. I'm so glad you're sharing all this. So what would be like, probably one of the last questions, I'll ask you a couple of questions, but what would be your biggest advice to like someone who is maybe experiencing like some sort of stop on their sexual experience with their partner, like what would be something they could
my biggest advice is
or
to
start working on, or
start to sit with themselves and ask themselves, like, what are the consequences of me not doing anything about this? You know, and especially, like, say, porn addiction. It's a very easy one because most people know that they're doing something that they're holding shame around, and feeling guilty for, and so asking themselves, like, what are the results of this in my relationships, whether it's an intimate relationship or relationships with friends, you know, coworkers, family members, because it's going to affect every aspect of your life. Right? And so when we are holding shame and guilt, no matter what it is, especially if it's around our sexuality, it's going to affect every part of our life and every relationship. So the first thing I would say is, like, really just go deep within and ask yourself, what is my life like right now because of this? And, you know, what could it be if I start to address these things? Like, what could my relationship look like if I start to release a lot of this shame and guilt and, you know what I mean, become fully sexually expressed and empowered in that, you know? So that's what I would say. The first thing is to really look inside.
So kind of come back to the self and, like, do the self-inquiry and self-work, which is so potent to go out and function in the world and have a healthy relationship. I think I kind of hit all the questions here that you kind of laid out for me. Let's see, what time do we have? Is it
12:09?
12:09.
I mean, I could share a little bit around, like,
share.
So to me, the reason why it's like my chosen path is, like, through my sexuality and connecting that to my spiritual path is because through me studying different traditions like Tantra and Taoism and things like that, and even actually here at the temple learning a little bit about Kriya Yoga and Paramahansa Yogananda and his teachings.
Self-realization center.
Yes, absolutely. And that was my introduction to meditation and that life force energy or Kundalini energy. And so to me, that if you're familiar with Kundalini energy and things like that, it's that life force energy that is at the base of the spine, right? And through different techniques and through sex, through different tantric sexual practices, you can begin to arouse that energy, which is, to me, that consciousness that exists in all of us and usually is dormant. And so the way I connect my sexuality is understanding that as I awaken that energy within me and bring that up the spine, my experience has been healing, transformation, like beyond anything, you know, as it comes up and in your heart, expanding your heart, you know, and up into the higher centers, energy centers. It's like, this is all part of spirituality, whether you understand you're doing that with a technique or if it's just some other spiritual practice you have that you're necessarily not aware. I believe that you are energetically pulling that life force energy up the spine and raising your consciousness, which is evolving you spiritually, you know? And so that's kind of my relationship to why I choose to use my sexuality as part of my spiritual practice. My main spiritual practice.
Your main spiritual practice.
Absolutely.
So for you, it's like making love can be it's like a meditation. It's like a union with the divine.
It's a prayer.
It's a prayer, which can really be applied to everything we do, right?
Absolutely.
Like even just consuming food, right? Can be a moment of connection with the divine in a meditation. So your message is so potent. It's like we get to be sexual and we can make it so special and powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Another thing I share with people is, like, when you think of a guru, right? And a guru to me is someone who is your doorway to God, right? And someone who you are choosing to connect with source, with God, with spirit, right? And so through sexuality and understanding that if you choose to, use sex as a way to elevate your consciousness, you're using your lover essentially as that guru, that teacher, that doorway to God, right?
Wow.
And one of the most powerful things that David Data, I don't know if you're probably familiar with some of his work, but he has a book called Finding God Through Sex. And he refers to the practice of surrendering through your lover, not to your lover.
Through your lover.
Through your lover, to God, to spirit, to the divine. And so that's like the ultimate, the highest form of spiritual and sexual like practice for me, is when the woman I'm with, I'm worshiping her, not as who she is necessarily, as this physical form, this personality, but as an embodiment of the divine, as the goddess, right? And then merging my own masculine energy, her feminine energy together in creating that marriage of masculine and feminine energy, mother and father energy, matter and spirit, which is matter being the lower three chakras, spirit being the upper three chakras. And when you bring those two, you're familiar with the chakras, and the pyramid, the triangles that point, one points up, one points down. I believe that's because the ultimate like goal is to marry matter and spirit, feminine and masculine, within each of us at that heart center. And through these practices, you can begin to do that and expand your ability to love and receive love through this. It's been like, for me, everything.
Wow. Yeah, so really like being conscious of this masculine, feminine energy combining together, and like the beauty and the medicine for the both of you during this time of being together.
Absolutely.
So cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I feel like we could talk about this all day. Oh my
I
God.
could talk about it all day.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I have this other question, but we're going to leave that one for maybe later. So, share with us, like, anything else you want to share with us, how we can maybe potentially work with you, or about your offering, or whatever
so I guess
it is.
the easiest way for people to connect to me right now is through Instagram.
Okay.
It's like my main focus, and it's something that I'm using as a tool for my work and to bring awareness to sacred sexuality and the work I do. So you can follow me at Instagram at Ken Rosaasen, which is my last name is Rosaasen. And that'd be the easiest way to connect with me. And so if you're interested in learning how you could begin to use your sexuality as a way to transform your life and your relationships and every aspect of your life, then reach out. I'd love to work with you.
Amazing. So Ken's Instagram, we'll leave all that in the links and all that information for you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you,
Yay. Ciao.